Welcome to Code with Richard. This episode is simple temperature conversion, and I'm going to show you how to write a simple program to convert between Fahrenheit and Celsius, and also back from Celsius back to Fahrenheit. In addition to getting more practice, I'm going to introduce functions and talk a little bit about why we use them. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is verify my math, because we know that converting Fahrenheit to Celsius, there's a little bit of math involved. So I have a script right here that I'm going to start with, and I'm just going to create a variable called Fahrenheit, and I'm going to start with 212, because I know 212 is boiling, and I looked up on the internet what the formula is on how to convert to Celsius. And according to the formula, I take my Fahrenheit, I subtract 32, and multiply by 5/9. So I should have Celsius. So if this works, I can go ahead and print Celsius here, and I'd expect this to print 100, because we know that 100 is Celsius. It is Celsius for boiling, excuse me. Okay, so that seems to work, and I can change this to 32, because I know that 32 is freezing in Fahrenheit, and it comes out 0 in Celsius. So these are my two data points that are working, and if I want to convert the other way around, I'm just going to copy and paste the formula. So this is Celsius times 9/5 plus 32. And what I'm also going to do is copy and paste a print statement so I can print my Fahrenheit. So in this case, I expect, I start with 32 Fahrenheit. I expect print 0 and then back to 32. Let's run this to verify. So I get 0 and 32. And let's put boiling back in here and verify that it's printing at 100 for Celsius and 212 for Fahrenheit. Okay, so let's make this a little bit easier for the user to use, because right now I have to modify this temperature every single time I want to change it, but maybe we want to ask the user what they want to put in. So the first thing that I can add is I'm just going to add a print statement to the user. Enter 1 to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. So this will be very easy. The user can just push 1, and that will tell the program that they intend to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. For any other input, we'll assume they want to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit. And we'll ask the user that, and then we'll just create a variable temp selection, and we'll just store whatever the user puts in as input. So we'll save this, and then let's ask the user, enter your temperature. And let's create a variable temp, and I'm going to say input. But we also know that input is always a string when the user types it in, and because I'm going to be performing math operations on it, I'm going to convert it to an integer. So we will pass this into this function int. Now what I can do is perform the conversion. And so remember, it depends on what the user wants to do. If they want to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius, I'm going to use one formula. If they want to convert from Celsius to back to Fahrenheit, I'll use the other formula. So I can put a conditional here. And my condition is if my temp selection equals the string 1. So just remember that whatever the user puts as input, whether it looks like a number or it is composed of characters, it's always going to be a string. So that's why I have quotes right here to compare it to a string. And so if we are converting from Fahrenheit to Celsius, that's this line right here, because 1 means Fahrenheit to Celsius. So we can just copy, let's go to copy these two lines here, because this is converting from Fahrenheit back to Celsius. We'll put this in here. But one of the things that's really important is my indentation, because if I want it to be in this if clause, if I want it to be in the true, if the condition is true, it will execute everything that is indented right below it. And I can put an else. So in this else, it's going to convert the other way around. It'll convert from Celsius back to Fahrenheit. And so let's copy this code right here. Okay. One thing you might have noticed is that my temperature is actually temp. So we'll come over here and we'll take our temperature for our math on it to convert Celsius, and also we'll do the same thing here as well. And we'll put temperature, put a space here to make it a little bit easier to understand. And we don't need any of this stuff that's here. So go ahead and delete this. Let's save this and let's go ahead and run it. So let's go ahead and do our Fahrenheit to Celsius test again, and we'll choose boiling, so we'll do 212, and we hit 100, which is expected. We can test it again and put 32, and we'd expect 0. And let's convert the other way around, and we'll just put a 0 here. So not 1 can actually be anything. And I'm going to put a Celsius here, put 100, I get my 212. And again, I can just put anything here. I'll say no, and I'll put 0, and I get 32. So those are basically the numbers that I expect. Now I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce functions and how it can improve our code a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is make some space at the top, and I'm going to create a custom function. So to create a function, you just type def, and I'm going to create a function called Fahrenheit to Celsius. So you give it a name, and you put parentheses, and you have the option to include arguments. And in this case, I'm going to have the input as an argument. I'm sorry, the input is temp. This variable is its argument. And all this is going to do is perform the math given Fahrenheit and return Celsius. So I'm going to go down here and copy this formula and also return temp minus 32 times 5 ninths. And so let's see what I did. I created a function with the def keyword, and this is the name, Fahrenheit to Celsius. This function takes in one parameter or one input called temp. And so this temp is a variable I can use inside my function. And what this function is going to do is return my temp, but minus 32 times 5 ninths. Likewise, I can create the reverse conversion, Celsius to Fahrenheit. And I can also give it a temp, if I put a colon at the end. And I'm going to copy this down here. And what this will do is perform the opposite math operations. So this function is Celsius to Fahrenheit. It takes in one parameter called temp, and what it will do is return temp, but multiply it times 9/5 and add 32. So I just realized that I actually don't even need those parentheses. So functions generally have inputs and outputs, and these are from the code perspective. So when I want to use Fahrenheit to Celsius, this function, the code itself has to pass in a parameter or an argument, which is temp, and it returns something. So whoever calls this function can use the value that's returned. And likewise, Celsius to Fahrenheit takes in a parameter temp and returns a temperature as well. But it's just functions don't have to have inputs and they don't have to have outputs. For example, this print function that's built in does not have any output. If I print a variable and I call it like variable var equals print, the value with this var is not something that is very useful for us. Typically, functions that have no output, the program will actually convert it to some special value, which means there isn't. But this print, it actually does something. It prints something to the screen, but it's not an output because we can't do anything with that from the code. Printing to the screen is actually called a side effect, and a side effect is just some action that a function can take, but it's not returned to the code. It's not usable within the code. Okay, so let's go ahead and use these functions. So down here in this temp selection, if it's 1, I know that I want to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So let's copy this function name. Oops, excuse me, wrong line. So I'm going to call my function Fahrenheit to Celsius, and I'm going to give it temp, and I can just assign the output of this function to Celsius, and then print Celsius there. Likewise, copy here, and paste Celsius Fahrenheit as here, and let's try to run this again. So if I want to convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit, I'm sorry, from Fahrenheit to Celsius, a quick check, and it does convert 212 Fahrenheit to Celsius. I can make this look a little bit nicer. I can make this a string, and since this is Celsius, I'll put C. And likewise, Fahrenheit F. Run this, and I want to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. Let's put 32 this time. It's 0C. And if I want to convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit, let's put 100, and I should get 212. And you might think, well, this doesn't really save us very much. But the reason why I wanted to introduce a very easy example for functions is because although it's not doing much inside these functions, we could have easily copied and pasted this code here. As our code gets more and more complex, using functions is a great way to make code a lot more readable. And if we need to have the same code used in multiple places, it's a great way to reuse code. Thank you for joining Code with Richard and this episode on simple temperature conversion. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, please leave them below in the comments. See you next time. Thanks.